of Social Democracy. So that is essentially, Doc, that's the party school.
That's the party school.
For the National Democratic Congress.
Exactly.
Doc, good morning.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, too.
How are you?
I'm good.
Yes, and a happy New Year to you.
Same to you. Many happy returns.
Yes. You must be an excited man because you moved around the country selling the message. You went around training party people on what to do on election day, and also even the kind of messaging and everything. Yielded the results you want?
Yes, indeed.
Exceeded your expectations?
Yes, and indeed, this victory is very therapeutic because it took quite a lot of effort to dislodge a non-performing government. And I'm very happy that we were commissioned by our flag bearer then, His Excellency John Mahama. The school, the institute, was commissioned to go around the country and train all the regional executives, all the constituency executives on elections management, conflict resolution, understanding the philosophy of the party. And we did that to good effect. And indeed, we put them in readiness to monitor and to police the polls. And we are very happy about the outcomes. That's why I'm very excited about that.
And you call it therapeutic?
Very therapeutic, because a lot of Ghanaians were undergoing a lot of stress and indeed anger and disappointment. And therefore, I don't know whether to say the defeat or the victory. The victory has relieved people, at least it's this hope in people that things will get better. And indeed, somebody told me the other day that even if I don't eat in a day, I'm still happy. That's the extent to which it has healed people of the stress, of the despondency, of the anger, and of the loss of, appetite.
And so far, it seems since walking into office, the government has had a lot to do already.
Yes.
You expect this to be the way the government runs? There'll be so much to solve. There's so much work to do within 4 years. Was that what you anticipated? That for 4 years that John Dramani Mahama will be in power, you have so much work to do?
Yes, indeed. He's already got established a track record of honoring his mandate, and indeed he did that in his first term. And it's just only 6 days, and of the 26 points that he had in the social contract, in the last 6 days, and he's already taken action on almost 4 or 5 of them within 1 week. And so it is quite clear that he's determined, and he knows that this is, I term it a legacy tenure, a legacy mandate. He knows that his performance is going to inure to the benefit of Ghanaians and indeed to the NDC as well. And so, yes, I mean, it hasn't come as a surprise to me in particular, because he was intensely involved in the crafting of the manifesto. If you recall, he was in the field doing the town hall meetings during even the COVID time. And so he's very much on top of what the expectations of the voters, what the expectations of Ghanaians are, and he's responding appropriately.
Well, if you just join us, Dr. William Haji is rector at Ghana Institute of Social Democracy, which means every time they are developing, in fact, you were at the heart of the development of the manifesto. How long have you been working within the context of, when it comes to crafting manifestos for the National Democratic Congress?
Okay, I was there in 2008, 2012, 2016, 2020, and then 2024. I mean, I've been in the last 5 manifestos, and so, maybe I seem to be the most experienced. I don't know
when it comes to
anybody else who's been involved. In 2016, actually, I actually led the development of the ones we call the Changing Lives and Transforming Ghana. That was a very significant one because people didn't get into that particular message when JM promised to transform lives. People didn't understand it. Of course, NPP's propaganda and the lies about the free SHS knocked that out. But I think this current manifesto is a very transformative document. It's not one of those manifestos, and it came from people's expectations as well. So, yes, I've been at it for all this while.
And considering the work that has been done, I want to then go into this current manifesto.
Sure.
And the social contract you talk about, that's the 120 days.
Yes.
What is promised to do within the 120 days. Because today, 3 of the ministerial nominees are being vetted. He has some 20 more to do, and perhaps the regional ministers, among others. But he's already tackled the matter of lands, suspending it. That's one. Is of course, you can see a trajectory towards the educational meetings, the conference and everything. But first, let me start with the kind of thought that went into developing the manifesto in the first place. You were in opposition. You had to do an assessment of what you will come and see and how to tackle this. How did you arrive at what the challenges were?
Okay, they were driven by the principle that the powers of government derive from the sovereign will of the people.
Okay.
So if you are going to seek political power from the people, what you are basically trying to do is to respond to their expectations as a government that has been loaned the authority to govern for a defined period. Okay. So your best option is to go to them and find out what they need. Okay. And the process of developing this manifesto, and indeed with previous manifestos, is a very consultative process. We went to different communities, and indeed then flag bearer led the process. And in his campaign, he was also receiving information as to what the people's expectations are. The Manifesto Committee itself constituted 22 different committees on different subjects who were, each of them involved in consultation with stakeholders. And we've met with different stakeholders, indeed. So what is in the manifesto is not what the NDC thought through, but what it gathered from the expectation, the consultations that we had with the stakeholders. Several of them, Okada, Association of Ghana Industries, different groups, several of them, hundreds of them, and then they put their expectations on the table. We carried a lot of them, not all of them, but at least we carried a lot of them. Different committees were engaging. And so the manifesto represents actually a contract with the people that, well, this is what you expect, and give us the power, and then we can respond appropriately with that. Obviously, if we don't do their expectations, you will suffer what NPP has suffered. I mean, the arrogance of power and the misgovernance, all of that will cost you the power. You can make all the noise you can, that I'm not going to hand over to, you don't even own the power. It's a loan to you. It's just a case of reversing the principles of principal and agent, you know, power holders or duty bearers who are in government leadership. They're actually holding the power on behalf of the people. And so you are bearing duty. They are the power holders. And so if you reverse that principle and you think that because you are being elected, you are the one who is more powerful, they will demonstrate to you that you don't have any state power at all. It doesn't belong to you. And it's a caution to every government, including our own government, that if you don't act in response to their expectations, they will vote you out. Or they will refuse to vote for you. And you lose the power to govern.
So as persons who were seeking to be agents, you went to the principals?
Yes, we did.
And asked them what you want us to do for you?
Exactly. If your actions are not responsive to the expectations, you are likely to, I mean, it's not just be voted out, but probably you will suffer the indignity that the previous government has suffered.
What was the immediate response you got? Because for a lot of Ghanaians, there's a trust deficit in politicians.
Yes.
So you come to them asking them, what do you want us to do for you? Some Ghanaians may most likely respond by telling you that even if I tell you cry, you won't do it, and may not be interested in even having that kind of conversation with you. But what response did you get?
It was quite obvious that the voters have become a lot more discerning than we thought, or we've been thinking. They've been growing. The democracy itself is unfolding over the period, and so the voters are beginning to understand the process of owning political power. And therefore, if you are interested in leading them, in actually acting in accordance with their expectations, the consultation process should reflect what they are looking for. And that's why I'm saying that we, as a political party, are a social democratic party which is driven by a number of values. And those values guide the way we do our work. We are different from the NPP. Our core values have to do with accountability. They have to do with probity. They have to do with social justice. They have to do with equity. And indeed, it also have to do with inclusiveness. If you are going to govern, you have to govern with the people who entrusted you with the power. Let them be part of the decision-making process. And in respect of that, you know that we started the decentralization process. What it meant was you are asking them to actually be part of the decision-making process. So our core values as a social democratic party completely sets us apart from the NPP that is so elitist in the way they do things. We are a grassroots party, and we go to the grassroots for our mandate.
So let me ask a question. Now, this one, we're just discussing the number of ministers.
Yes.
You pegged it at 60.
Yes.
In fact, there were people who were always thinking, 60, that seems impossible to meet for a lot of people. Was this based on a demand by the people for reducing the size of government?
Yes, to a large extent, yes. But it's also driven by the fact that we are a developing country, and if you have a large number of ministers, your expenditure would go up. And indeed, what that also means is that you are depriving communities of basic amenities, basic services, because a lot of the money goes into per capita expenditure on each of the ministers. And so, yes, it's a cost-saving principle or factor. But as you rightly said also, people complain if you have a huge government. And indeed, the former President Akufo-Addo is on record to have, built a very big budget government, a lot of it going into expenditure for the appointees. And so it is, yes, President John Mahama has been the president of Ghana before. He knows the enormity of work in front of him, and he has the capability to respond to all of those ones. And so 60 is not that bad at all. It could be even lower. I mean, because a minister leads the process, but he has a group of technical people. And indeed, you remember we changed the head of the administrative unit of all the ministries from principal secretary to a director, a chief director. And on this one, the intention was to look for experienced people. So if you become a chief director, you must have had expertise in that particular area. And therefore, those are the people whose work would drive, or who are going to be working on behalf of the minister. So you don't need too many ministers as you would find in the US or in Germany or in the UK. We are not doing anything different. If you compare ours with theirs, you will know that we even still have a large portfolio of ministers.
And you must be listening to the calculations.
Yes, I heard you when I was coming. I was but there's an element of huge cost savings. Indeed, when His Excellency spoke in UPSA, I think sometime last year or 2 years ago, about building the Ghana we want together, he actually gave an indication of reducing the size of government as a way of saving on scarce resources, indeed. And he's also looking at alternative ways of raising revenue. And in that particular speech, he actually said that it would be too difficult running a huge government and trying to economize on your resources. So it's a fulfillment of a promise, but it's based on his own assessment of what he can do in this legacy tenure.
But did you also consider, because when you look at your party now, it's largely youthful. Your party has become now more attractive to many young people who have also come on board in fighting for these elections. And you can go around, even in parliament alone, you can find 23 people who can be ministers. You can find a further 23 who can be their deputies. That's in parliament alone. Now, if you decide to leave parliament, you know yourself, you work with many young people who have proven that they can take up those positions. Yourself, even at your level, can also take up those positions because of the exigencies of the moment, bring in some experience to drive those ministries. Did you consider the human resource that was available to you and how you may not be utilizing it fully and how you may also anger a lot of people by deciding to go with those numbers?
Oh, but you can help develop this country in many areas of endeavor. You don't necessarily have to be a minister to help in the effort to bring prosperity to Ghana, as we have put in our manifesto. Indeed, resetting Ghana is based on jobs, accountability, and prosperity. So the job of a minister is not the actual, field work per se. They are different. There are boards. There are chief executive officers. There are municipal chief executive officers. So I do not think that people should really worry very much, and you create a situation where we saw in the past where government was trying to reward party loyalists by creating more ministries. No, that way you don't develop the country. What you are doing is that you are just creating jobs for the boys or the girls as well, and you will suffer the fate that the NPP has suffered. We don't want to go that route. We're also indicating that, as you said, it's a youthful population. The demographics show that, and you said it when I was on my way here, that Ghana has a youthful population. What is their expectation? Jobs. Okay. And if you look at the statistics, in fact, beyond the 14.7% that had been talked about, there are even huge numbers if you look at the different age groups, And so one of the first things that you have to focus on is to create jobs for the youth. Okay. And indeed, that's why His Excellency has established a Ministry of Youth Empowerment. It is important. Okay. Because if you don't do that, sometimes it's like you are sitting on a keg of explosives. I mean, a time bomb, basically. It happened in Kenya. It happened in Nigeria. They were getting more and more angry and more expectant. I mean, now we have theories about 010, about what they eat. I'm sure I've been listening to the things that they've been telling you, you've been saying. They don't eat 3 meals a day any longer. And so and then it actually denies them of a future. And so any political party that wants to create succession has to do things to attract the youth. And indeed, that's one of the core objectives of the NDC. And indeed, we worked very hard to reverse that sentiment that NDC is not attractive to the youth. And indeed, that's what our current president is trying to do. And there are a large number of young people who contested and they won and they began their political career. We need to transfer the ability to govern to them through our institution and through political apprenticeship.
Oh, very interesting. But I wanted to ask, the ministries that we see, was it part of the work of the Manifesto Committee?
Yes, it was part of the work of the Governance Committee. And indeed, the flag bearer himself was very, very instrumental in the conversations of that particular subcommittee of the Manifesto Committee. So he's been on top of everything. I mean, he spent time with the committee, and he was part of the discussions, all of that. And eventually, in fact, he even brought it down to 60. We had 64, and he brought it down to 60. So
when you did the calculations, it came to 64.
64.
But the man insisted that he wants it.
He wanted it. You see, he had more experience than we do in governance, so he brought it down to 60, and he means it. And he's demonstrated fidelity to many of the things that he said he's going to do. And so we don't have any doubts at all that he will work with 60. We don't.
And that's one of the interesting things for those of you who did the manifesto. I understand the running mate then, who is now first female vice president, was constantly part of the meetings.
Absolutely.
You mean she never took herself out of the Manifesto Committee?
At all.
Even after being nominated as running mate?
Even since 2020, she's been part of the Manifesto Committee, and she comes there. In fact, sometimes, she will have another meeting, but she will join us in the discussions before she leaves. She's been very, very active in that. So she also is very conversant with everything in the manifesto. In fact, she even guided some of the conversations and corrected our English language sometimes.
So they have two people in office at the highest office of the land
who were part of
knows the manifesto as well as those.
Yes. Okay. Yes, absolutely, indeed, and we are happy about that because it was, as I said, it was a collective decision to come to this level of reaching an agreement with the people on the things that they want. We met almost all of them. Every committee was busy. Every member was busy. So we can say that we had a more solid team than somebody whose name I don't want to mention, and how I feel about him and his integrity deficits and all of that. Yeah, So I think that it was a very, very instructive process. And it has led to, we don't even call ours a manifesto any longer. It's a transformation document. And
transformation document.
Yes, and indeed, our president had indicated that if you are appointed, you will have to go through an orientation on that, and you are going to also enter into an agreement it's a performance-driven thing. So there are KPIs that you must be seen to be, achieving, and there will be an assessment of your work on an annual basis. So, I mean, sometimes I think people should be apprehensive about being struggling to become ministers. If you're not going to keep to, achieving the KPIs, please don't go for it. Otherwise, you'll be embarrassed. Yes.
But then let me ask you about the three people who have been nominated first.
Yes.
There's the finance minister nominee.
Yes.
Dr. Kisela Tufosum. Was he an active part of your deliberations?
All three of them have been very, very active in the
sectors where they are
in the various sectors. So it doesn't come as a surprise to.
So they know what the
they
work
know
that was
what
done
the
with
work is, what involves, and in fact, they provided even knowledge for the fiscal and monetary policies, for the energy policies, and the governance issues. They're all members of them. So. We don't have any problem at all. What they left us to do was to just develop implementation schedules and the KPIs, which will be given to them as well.
Have you finished with those implementation schedules?
We were done with all of that before the elections.
I see.
Yes.
Then you did a lot of work.
Volumes.
So,
the 22 subcommittees were at work, and then the Manifesto Committee itself were meeting regularly, just so we can achieve the targets that were given to us. And we are quite proud of the work that we've done. We're led by Professor Danso Boafo, and it's been quite some exercise.
So everybody who will be nominated for a particular portfolio will have will be told exactly what his ministry is supposed to do under the
manifesto.
Okay,
yes.
Okay, under the manifesto.
Yeah.
And how to even guidance as to how to do it.
Yes, because we have to achieve results. It's not, we are moving away from that propaganda kind of thing that you just tell the people, oh, I'll supply, I'll build one factory in your district and all of that, and you wouldn't do it. We moved away from propaganda because the Ghanaians are looking for development. And indeed, we cannot remain at this level of underdevelopment. And every time that you come, oh, well, I built a very good foundation, and like the State of Nation address by former President Akufo-Addo, I've built a foundation. You spent 8 years in building a foundation. When are we going to take off then? Because the indication was that NDC was pulling the country back, and I'm bringing SHS, and I'm bringing factories, and then at the point of exit, you're saying that, well, I've left a very strong foundation. No, we cannot be sitting on a foundation interminably. No, we need to move. We need to put up the superstructure. And indeed, that's why you notice that our manifesto says jobs, accountability, and prosperity. The prosperity is where we are going to be spending a lot of efforts in building Ghana that we all want. And that's that part of the exercise. The JM, our president, has indicated that he's going to reset Ghana. But at least we need to rebuild the broken system. And then on top of that, he would leave the legacies that we're looking at, and that will push Ghana forward.
The themes, jobs,
accountability,
and prosperity. So one after the other.
Okay.
And I realize that even if when you look at there are two ministries which you can say, because there's the youth development and empowerment, then there's also the fact that you've added jobs to the employment and labor ministries.
Yeah.
How key an issue is the matter of jobs for you? And because you've also put on the table the 24-hour economic concept. When the vice president now, when she was campaigning, talk about the Women's Development Bank, among others, and she actually did focus even on markets, going to markets to campaign. How key an issue is jobs for you?
Very, very, very important. In fact, you would see in the social contract, first of all, you mentioned the 24-hour economy, and I know that the Honorable Guzitano spoke about it extensively, and indeed he's been appointed to superintend over that. But there are other aspects of it as well. We have the flag bearer has said that he will launch priority job creation programs in the first budget. So once we look at the budget again, there are very specific projects that will be done. We call one the Jumara program. We have the National Apprenticeship program, and we have the 1 million coders program. Those are job creating opportunities that will be done within this first 120 days. Indeed, the pieces of legislation that will bring the different aspects of the 24-hour economy into being would be done within this 120 days. Indeed, those ones are even going to be 90 days. And therefore, there's a serious need to respond to the unemployment rate by the youth, and therefore there's real serious action that will be taken in these respects to ensure that at least we respond to that, because that was a demand from the youth. The transition period from school to the job market to be hired used to be 3.7 years in the past. It's now almost 4.5. So it means that once you complete school, you're going to stay home for almost 5 years. 5 years.
Before you get a job.
Before you get a job. And it is in response to this that the 24-hour economy policy was mooted and actually sold out to the youth. Of course, as we keep saying, 1 job, 3 shifts, 3 people, is very relevant. And it's going to respond to some of these things that we came from our youth as well. So all of these are there. The National Apprenticeship Program, for instance, would equip you with self-employable skills or employable skills. And so you can go out there and then it comes with a package, tools that can allow you to transition from an untrained person to a skilled person to somebody who can create jobs, hire people yourselves, or be hired by people who need your services. And those kinds of training we call modular training. Small, maybe a 3-month training in panel beating or welding, and then you can start. Then you can progress on that. You can go back to NVTI or any of the institutions, and then you can go for the next module, and then you become a professional in the field. So all of these things have been thought through, and we are going to do that. Of course, the Million Coders program, which we put in the 2020 manifesto, and then somebody stole it and started making a lot of noise about that, would be effected. I mean, it will give an effect through we started this whole thing about a digital economy, and so we would continue that process. Of course, I was in NIA and all the things that, the foundations that we built, this one is the proper foundation. Yeah, so all of these things are going to happen within this period, and we are quite happy that the mandate was given to our visionary and transformative John Mahama to lead that process.
And then there's the matter of accountability. In fact,
definitely.
In fact, recently somebody did a quick survey on the most popular policy proposal from the National Democratic Congress. Ora was number 1.
Yes.
By a huge stretch.
Yes.
Are you surprised that many people pick Ora when it comes to it's placed number 1 in terms of what people want to see?
Yes. I used to be the consultant to the National Development Planning Commission on governance, and accountability was one of the key things that people were worried about, and so we were scoring governments on how accountable they are to the people who entrusted them with the power. And you know that in our previous regime, we had accounting to the people. So basically what we were telling the people that this is what we've used your money for. This is the volume of money that we've managed to raise from your taxes and from the money that we borrowed, and this is what we use the money for. Now, the same people, having transitioned from NDC to NPP, were expecting to see that level of accountability. But then it was the opposite. They saw the opposite, where public resources were appropriated for private gains, private development. So state officials were appropriating public resources, and people were seeing it. I mean, obviously, some officials who were eating gobe with them in their opposition days, all of a sudden wouldn't even stop to greet them. So it became very obvious to everyone that the government was not accounting for the resources the way the people expected. And therefore, and then there were all sorts of new developments. They were acquiring properties, and Ghanaians were discerning, or they are discerning. So they saw all of these ones. And one of the key things that they threw at us during the engagement process was that please hold these people accountable. Accountability is part of our language. For some reason, it has transitioned into our local languages. In Ghana, they say akontabu. In Twi, they say akontabu. In Never, we said akontabubu. So all of these concepts exist with the people. And therefore, they know that you've been entrusted with public resources. and you are not using it the way it should be done. It should be used for our benefit.
Was that the opinion you got from?
Yes, absolutely.
Because you said people came to you and said, hold them accountable.
Oh, yes.
That Ghanaians had concluded
Yes.
that they are wasted and mismanaged state resources.
Yes, and in fact, some said if His Excellency John Mahama doesn't do anything at all, and he can recover all the monies they've stolen, they'll be satisfied. They're cool with it. So that's how serious it is about ensuring that you account for what you are entrusted with. The power itself, but the resources also. And so oral is so central to the things that we have to do, because some of the resources, the U.S. returned $50 million to Nigeria. And indeed, in our interactions, we got all sorts of intel about people investing in other countries, people moving items from Ghana. We saw the issue about gold. They go in private jets, they move huge monies. People put a lot of money under their beds. You know, you put money under your bed and your house help takes it, and then you go to court. You've stolen the money. Indeed, in our campaign, we even told voters that, look, if they try to buy you with publicly stolen money, collect the money and vote them out. And they responded to that. Indeed, we saw evidence of it. But accountability is central. One of the central tenets of good governance is to be accountable, to be transparent, and demonstrate a high level of integrity in the management or public resources entrusted to you. So it is so central.
What is the structure that you've designed to be used? Because you can go around. Of course, there's Yoko, special prosecutor. In fact, there's a financial crimes unit that investigates from the Bank of Ghana's perspective. There's also CID, NIB. There's you can find many institutions that are into investigations. What's your thoughts on which of the institutions are best suited to do that job?
Well, I won't second guess what our president will be doing, but I think that he would definitely establish an institution, maybe a committee, or like it's been done, the interim one, to ensure that he honors this demand from the people to extract accountability from those. That's why, for instance, in the last week or so, he's already asked that the Lands Commission should give an account of all public lands that have been disposed of in the recent past. And you know what it means by the recent past. All persons will do that. And then he's also in the 26-point social contract, it's also indicated that you will ensure that persons who are in government, who are politically exposed, would not procure or purchase state property, state lands, and everything. So he's very definite on that, and I'll leave that for him to do. At his discretion. So
but what then do you make of that move, the preparatory committee? What do you make of?
It was necessary. It was very, very necessary, because typically people who have stolen state property would run when the tides change. Indeed, they didn't anticipate that there was going to be this massive victory by the NDC. Of course, some knew, because their own internal studies, internal surveys show that they were losing power. And typically at that period, they either try to convert their CDs into dollars, and puts a lot of pressure on, and that's why the value of the dollar goes up in the run-up to elections. So, yes, they knew that was going to happen. And so, yes, they're quickly trying to shift and move resources out of government. And so you needed an instrument, an institution that could quickly deal with that. That's why the interim committee was established, to at least deal with that transition period. Because, as you probably know, everybody was telling you, the Masons were the ones who put up the buildings for them. The carpenters do it. So we tell you, this one is being put up by this other person. And so you get the information. But you needed to do something to avoid the pillaging of the state resources at the last minute. And it happens most of the time. People have even flown out of the country already. They did that when they saw it coming. And so you needed an institution like that. But I suspect that I believe, not suspect, that His Excellency is going to create an institution that would perhaps put all of these bodies together, or establish a committee or something to handle that, because it's an electoral promise that he has to fulfill.
And correct me if I'm wrong. I found out yesterday that your master's is in social development.
In regional development. So I did economics, regional economics, finance and budgeting, and all of those things.
I see. So then let's come to prosperity.
Okay.
Because that's a key issue for okay. It is possible to prosper, but with the current economic circumstances, most Ghanaians find that prosperity is now at the top, but most Ghanaians below, who have to go through a day-to-day hustle, even when people have called them names for excessive profiteering among others, you still find that even the large profit you made cannot cater for your basic expenses, still keep your business running and keep up. So for a lot of Ghanaians, what they want now is keep their head above water much more easily. And I've heard the president himself talk about stabilizing the economy. At what point in time does prosperity come in when you are struggling to stabilize?
We measure that there are indicators of basic, if you like, prosperity indicators. It has to do with per capita income as well, which essentially has to do with disposable income. How much can you earn that will allow you to meet your basic needs, or perhaps beyond the basic needs, other needs? Well, at least the needs first and then your wants later. In other words, you need water, you need education for your kids, you need food, you need accommodation. All of those things should be possible within the incomes that you have. Now, if those per capita income is not sufficient for you to acquire some of those things, then your situation is dire. And so any government that can create the opportunity for an increase in your per capita income, there are income measures of poverty, there are non-income measures of poverty. Any government that can do that, provide certain services, at least at reasonable cost, electricity, water, and utilities. Now, if from not a living wage, but a wage that can allow you to acquire some of these things, then that government is increasing your opportunities for you and improving your living conditions. The living conditions must be improved for you to be able to move to the next level. And as you know, as you move to the next level, your needs change or your wants change. Now, the prosperity that we are looking for has to do with job creation, income, and better living conditions. Better living conditions.
Income,
and better living conditions. And that will involve even the roads that you drive on that can give you access. It has to do with improved infrastructure as well. I mean, when I was coming, I was in traffic, and we tend to spend a lot of time in traffic, and of course you know that time is money as well. If we can create movement, free movement, improve access across, then they're increasing your productivity, and those are things that would engender prosperity as well. Yes.
So for you want to give the people job. These jobs must give them the income,
sufficient income,
and this income,
yes,
must give them a better life.
Exactly.
Okay, so those are the three things, plus then the kind of infrastructural base you provide.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes. And if you look at our manifesto, you look at those aspects of the provision of infrastructure, services, income, job opportunities, they are all in there. And that's why I said it's a transformative document Because at the end of it, and of the president has also mentioned the big push.
Okay.
So there will be massive infrastructural development. Indeed, he has committed to completing what's going on now. But beyond that, there will be new additional infrastructure that would make Ghanaians feel comfortable moving around, make Ghanaians feel comfortable having access to water, access to electricity. Of course, it's going to increase the generation capacity because it has to respond to the demands of those industries that are going to be part of the 24-hour economy policy. And so we need additional generation capacity. All of those things are part of this whole thing about the prosperity as well. And we assure Ghanaians that our visionary and transformative president is going to make that to happen.
Within that context of prosperity, because you're talking about a better life.
Yeah.
To what extent did you consider the economy? Because the economy will determine your better life. You can have so much money, but if the money doesn't buy much, you don't get a better life. So to what extent do you consider economy and the amazing indebtedness of this economy?
Well, the debt burden is a huge problem.
Yeah.
But I think that it was the structure of the economy that led to this whole campaign about creating a 24-hour economy system. If we continue along this line, then we can. Obviously, when you listen to the estimates, our GDP growth would be, for you to move faster, you must have minimum 7% GDP growth rate. Now, because of the huge debt burden, debt overhang that we have now, it is difficult to use the same system because debt to GDP ratio is way over what was there before the NPP took over. Now, what have they done? They've just entered into the DDEP, they've entered into some agreements, and the payment of the debt itself has been suspended. We are just paying interest. So there's a huge overhang that the government would have to deal with. Now, the most important aspect of it is that we looked at the possibility of new revenues, but there also the possibility of increased productivity and production. And indeed, that's why the flag bearer the president says that he would actually supervise the Export Development Council himself. Now, if you can increase production and you export, then your economic, the currency exchange rate will stabilize. You probably are bringing in more foreign currency. At least you are selling. You are moving from taxation to production. This is the real one. Once you can produce, and indeed, once the 24-hour economy can generate additional goods and services, exportable, but also sellable in your local market, you're going to increase your GDP growth, and that can then improve the economy that you have. Otherwise, what do? We do voodoo economics. They would manage to borrow money and then push it into the local market. Our monetary policy and fiscal policies are all in disarray. They would do that. You show up the cedi for a while, and then once the demand for cedi increases, and it oscillates over time. Once that begins, then you get back to the same pressure on the cedi, and then it keeps rising. If you don't increase productivity, if you don't increase production, if you don't increase exports, you are going to be suffering this problem. And indeed, that's why our president had indicated that he would ensure that if we look at the social contract, one of the key things he'll be doing will be to ensure that we export and take advantage of the AFTA and all those other opportunities in the region. So it's all been thought out, very well thought out, led by he himself. So he knows exactly what he can do. He learned a lot of, and that's why we said experience and not experiment. He's an experienced hand.
Experience and not experiment.
Not experiment. And he's an experienced hand, and we believe that he's going to deliver on his mandate.
Fantastic. If you just join us, we have in studio Dr. William Ahaji of the Ghana Institute of Social Democracy, is rector, party school.
Headmaster of the party school.
Headmaster of the party. that's quite interesting. And this is just, but I'll come back to the matter. But I was thinking, do you have a lot of party people who are interested in learning about the ideology of the party?
Yes. In fact, we have had to put it on hold because of the run of the elections issues. But it's come up already. In fact, we've been trying to do is to complement the in-person training with online training. Okay. And there's the party school will actually mature into a brick and mortar institution in this period that we are in power. We're going to actually build.
You'll build a school.
We'll build a school. We actually acquired land, and we are going to have a physical location because it is important. And it's just similar to Nkrumah's Ideological Institute. Okay. You don't learn only about the ideology of the party. Okay. We run programs in public financial management, public policy making, mobilization, all of those things. And we've trained over 22,000 people, but that's still a small number compared to the number of people who need to understand. Indeed, it's even been proposed that every appointee has to go through a training to understand the core values and the principles of social democracy, which is the philosophy of the party, identity, ideology of the party. So we have a lot of work to do. Even for the new appointees, we have to do that as well. And this is the president himself, when he was campaigning as in the primaries for flag bearership, he made that commitment that all national, regional, and constituency executives will have to go through the training and to understand who we are. And so the principles would actually devolve into the policies that will be implemented at the level. The core values guide conduct as somebody holding public office. So it is a very essential part of the process. And indeed, the party intends to make it obligatory as a condition precedent for you to contest any position to go through at least an understanding, an orientation on what the ideology and the identity of the party is, what the history of the party is, what the political history of Ghana is, in addition to all the other skills that you are going to acquire, leadership skills. We have very, very, very strong faculty in doing that. Indeed, our vice president was one of our resource persons. The speaker was, in fact, they still are actually, because
Speaker of Parliament and the vice president.
The speaker has always indicated that anytime we are going to we do what we call parliamentary politics, and he is our resource person on that. What happens is that once the candidates go through that, when they go to Parliament, the learning curves gets better than when they go there completely green and they don't have anything. So he's been very faithful to us, and he's come along with us and done most of the training as well.
Yeah, because it's interesting watching in the house Alaji and Alaji a couple of arguments about what you're leaning. Comic Kwesi Prajina has always insisted that you are say a tidied form of capitalism rather than socialism. So I don't know.
There's democratic socialism, and then there's social democracy. They are different. We've transitioned from radical socialism to the center left. Radical socialism is basically everything driven by the state. Basically, states, of course, the extreme form of it is communism, but socialism, and then we've moved to center left, which means that we partner the private sector, but the state retains the power. So it's more of statism, but then you partner the private sector to push development. The other option is that the center right is more minimalist state and active private sector.
Okay.
We are the opposite of that.
Okay.
And so, yes, I understand him. In fact, I maybe I want to make this point that I want to associate myself with his assertion that we don't have 4 republics. We have one Republic of Ghana. And this whole thing about we are in the 4th Republic, it's something that I've been talking about myself. But when I heard him say the other time again, I said, yes, of course, we were doing all the things in the revolutionary days with him and what's his name? The other one, Kwekubako.
Okay.
In those days. But we've moved away. They've gone their way, we've gone our way as well. But we are not shy of being social democratic party. We've transitioned from extreme socialism, and there's a long history on that one. When the 1981 December 31st was staged, we tried to seek help from our partners, our socialist partners. We ended up introducing Economic Recovery Program 1, Economic Recovery Program 2. That was more of the Western type of thing. It modified our position a bit, and so that's another conversation we can have.
Day. Yes, I
know.
Another day. I know. The whole ideological conversation.
Another conversation.
Anyway, look.